Good morning, year 6. I hope you're well and have had a good day so far. Today in reading, we're going to be thinking about chapter 7 of Private Peaceful a little bit more. And we're going to try and make some comparisons within the text um, between different events and different characters. To be successful today, we're going to need to identify what a question's asking us to do. We're going to need to consider which element of the text links to the quotation that we're asked to focus upon, and we're going to need to include a reference to that text to Private Peaceful within our answer. Okay, so again, as I've said before, it might be a direct quotation, might be a less specific quotation, but just a reference to show that you understand the text. But whatever it is, you will need to show within your writing and within your answer that you understand the text. Quick bit of recall then. What? Okay, so our question today is what? What did Charlie steal? What did Tommy give to Molly? What did Charlie and Tommy poach? And what did Tommy drink despite not liking it? Okay, see if you can recall those. So first one, what did Charlie steal? He was Bertha. Okay, so the Colonel's hound, Bertha, as she became known. What did Tommy give to Molly? Coming from Charlie, what were they? They were letters, weren't they? What did Charlie and Tommy poach? And if you remember, they were caught poaching them. It was fish. You remember he fell asleep, didn't he, without Molly to talk to? And what did Tommy drink despite not liking it? It was beer. Okay, remember 15-year-old Tommy was going in and drinking beer in the pub despite not wanting to. Okay, as with yesterday, we've got some language here from our previous reading. Okay, so we can look at these 6 words, brook, cavalry, resentment, trespassing, hubbub, and scrambled. Now, some of them, such as hubbub, trespassing, and cavalry, we've actually looked at in detail. Some of them, such as brook, we might not have looked at in detail, but we have skirted over as part of reading the text. Now, these 6 words have appeared in Private Peaceful, which should give you a contextual understanding of what they are. If you're not sure, you can see from looking at the suffixes that 2 of them are likely to be verbs. So those which end if they're in the past tense with an ed suffix, or an ing suffix if they're in the current tense, present tense. So there's 2 verbs there, and then there's 4 nouns. That should give you an idea. What I'd like you to do is write next to these words what their correct definition is. So try and identify the definition. And then underneath that table, please can you write some whole sentences which make use of those pieces of language. Okay. Right, guys, thank you for that. Now, carrying on, what we're going to try and do is carry on with our text and thinking about which definition is correct for some particular piece of language. Okay, so we'll talk about these, or I'll talk to you and you see if you identify them correctly, but you don't actually need to write these down. So, there's the Sergeant Major. Who will be the first brave lad to come up and take the king's shin? No one moved. No one spoke up. Who'll lead the way? Come along now. Don't let me down, lads. I'm looking for boys with hearts of oak. Lads who love their king and their country. Brave boys who hate the lousy Hun. So Hun is this derogatory word used to describe Germans in the time of war. That was the moment the first one stepped forward, flourishing his hat as he pushed his way through the cheering crowd. I knew him at once from school. It was big Jimmy Parsons. Remember Jimmy, who had the fight with Charlie and Tommy before about his rudeness to Joe? I hadn't seen him for a while, not since his family moved away from the village. He was even bigger than I remembered, fuller in the face and neck, and redder too. It was showing off now, just like he'd always done in the schoolyard. Egged on by the crowd, others soon followed. You can see how one person doing it now prompts other people to join up and to sign up. Suddenly, someone prodded me hard in the small of my back. It was a toothless old lady pointing at me with her crooked finger. Go on, son, she crowed. You go and fight. It's every man's duty to fight when this country calls. That's what I say. Go on, you ain't a coward, are you? And this woman there is almost like one of these armchair patriots that Wilfred Owen hated so much, isn't she? She's got this idea. You don't want to be a coward. You want to go and fight for your country. Dulce et decorum est. There's nothing so noble as to fight for your country. Nothing so noble as to die for your country. Everyone seemed to be looking at me then, urging me on, their eyes accusing me as I hesitated. The toothless old lady jabbed me again, and then she was pushing forward. You ain't a coward, are you? You ain't a coward. I didn't run, not at first. I sidled away from her, which kind of means to edge away, to move away without fuss. I sidled away from her slowly. then backed out of the crowd, hoping no one would notice me. Tommy then, he's a bit conflicted, isn't he? He feels the pull and he can see the he wants a girlfriend, he wants Molly to love him. But he also, you can see people like Jimmy Parsons are getting the adulation. He doesn't want to be called a coward, does he? But he also doesn't want to die. What do we think about definitions from this text here? Lousy used as a word here. Lousy. A lousy Hun. Do we think that's very poor or bad Hun? So the Germans, have they been described as very poor or bad, or are they being described as beautiful? Well, the Sergeant Major's trying to get somebody to go and fight them. So do you think they're bad or good? Yeah, they're very poor, very bad. Okay, the lousy Hun is very poor, very bad. A coward then, the woman is trying to persuade him to join by saying, you ain't a coward, are you? You ain't a coward. Now, this is a bit contextual because coward is a derogatory term. Coward means somebody really here who lacks courage. She's saying you're not a coward. However, do you think it's possible to be saying you don't want to fight but still actually be making a sensible decision? Is it brave to fight? Yes. But could it also be brave not to fight? What do you think? Would a pacifist be somebody who's brave, possibly? Just something to think about there. Looking on to the next page then. Chicken! So he ran. Chicken, she screamed after me, chicken! And then I did run because he tried to sidle away, tried to edge away with nobody noticing. But she did. Chicken, she screamed after me, chicken! And he ran. I ran helter-skelter down the deserted high street, her words ringing in my ears. I drove the cart out of the market. I heard the band strike up again in the square, heard the echoing thump, thump, thump of the big bass drum calling me back to the flag. Filled with shame, I kept on going. All the way back to the farm, I thought about the toothless old lady, about what she had said, about what the sergeant major had said. I thought about how fine and manly the men looked in their bright uniforms, how Molly would admire me. You can still see her being a key character in his decision making. How Molly would admire me, might even love me if I joined up and come home in my scarlet uniform. How proud Mother would be and Big Joe. The time I was unhitching the horse back at the farm, I was quite determined that I would do it. I would be a soldier. I would go to France. And like the sergeant major said, kick the stuffing out of the lousy Germans. I made up my mind I would break the news to everyone at supper. I couldn't wait to tell them, to see the look on their faces. We'd barely sat down before I began. I was in Hathaway this morning, I said. Mr. Cox sent me to market. Skiving as usual, Charlie muttered into a soup. You can see that division between Charlie and Tom is there again in the way Charlie responds to Tom, trying to tell a story about where he'd been that day. Tom ignored him and went on. The army was there, Mother, recruiting. They were there. Jimmy Parsons joined up, lots of others too. How do you think Mother and Charlie are going to react to this? What do you think? The definitions then, helter skelter. So I ran helter skelter. Is that going to be calmly or is that going to be disorderly? I think it's going to be disorderly. Unhitching the horse back at the farm. Do you think that's stroking the horse or do you think that's detaching? What do you think? Helter skelter then does mean to disorderly. It's running really quickly, too quickly almost. He's running so quickly because he doesn't want to be called a chicken. He doesn't want to be shouted at anymore by the lady who saw him not signing up and called him a coward at the when the sergeant major was there. Unhitching then, he's got unhitching the horse. That means he's taken the horse and the cart back to the farm, and now he's unattaching the horse from the cart, so the cart is no longer attached to the horse. More fool them, Charlie said. I'm not going, not ever. I'll shoot a rat because it might bite me. I'll shoot a rabbit because I can eat it. Why would I ever want to shoot a German? I even met a German. It's interesting here. Charlie is taking on the role of some of these World War One poets we've seen. He's making the point. He's got no enemy in Germany. He doesn't understand why he needs to be fighting against Germany. He'll fight things that matter to him. He'll fight a rat that's trying to bite him. He'll kill a rabbit so he can eat it. But why should he kill a German? Mother picked up her spoon and handed it to me. Eat, she said, and patted my arm. And don't worry about it, Tomo. They can't make you go. You're too young anyway. And I'm nearly 16, I said. Got to be 17, said Charlie. Charlie showing that he's thought about it. He wants to be clear on the rules. He knows his rights if you think about it. Charlie is always careful to not overstep, to know what he's entitled to know what is right. He won't let you join unless you are. Don't want boys. Now, for Tomo, that must have hurt. Charlie calling him a boy again, not treating him as equal, not treating him as a man, as an adult. treat him as a boy. How's Tomo going to feel at that point? So I ate my soup and said no more about it. I was disappointed at first that I didn't get my big moment, but as I lay in bed that night, I was secretly more than a little relieved that I wasn't going off to war, and that by the time I was 17, it would all be over anyway. Tomo there believing the war won't take 4 years, will take less than two. So by the time he's 17, it'll be finished. Did it take that long? 1914 to 1918. A few years later, the colonel paid Mother a surprise visit. That's strange. Whilst Charlie and I were out at work, we didn't hear about it until we got home in the evening and Molly told us. I thought something strange was going on as Mother was unusually preoccupied and quiet at supper. She wouldn't even answer Big Joe's question, showing that she's finding things a bit different, a bit difficult. And when Molly got up and said, saying she felt like a walk and suggested both Charlie and I came with her, I knew for sure something was up. It was a very long time since we'd been out together, just the three of us. If Charlie had asked me, I'd have said no for sure. What do we think's going on here? What do we think's going on with Mum? What do we think the Colonel said? Okay, definitions then, but just the word preoccupied. So we see that Mother was preoccupied after the visit. Does that mean she's focused, so she's really talkative, or does it mean she's distracted? She's not concentrating. It means she's distracted. She's engrossed in other thought, thinking about other things. So whatever's happened with her and the Colonel is in her mind more than whatever Tomo and Charlie and Molly are talking to her about. That language around vocabulary to do it on those words from before, please. Thinking about those correct definitions and then using those words in sentences, please. And looking at the text, what do we think about the way that the visiting soldier, how is that visiting soldier, the sergeant major, similar to the colonel, and how is he different to the colonel? Okay, so what's the same about him and the colonel? What's different about him and the colonel? When I thought about that, I thought that, well, he's the same as the colonel because he tells people what to do, as the colonel did with his employees. So he bosses people around, really. Okay, he's different from the colonel, though, because it's not that they both want to fight in the war, because although the colonel says he does, I'm not convinced the colonel does. And I don't think the soldier actually wants to, because I think the soldier knows how bad the war was. I don't think it's just that the colonel tells other people what to do, because that's not the difference. I think that whilst the colonel tells people what to do, the visiting soldier actually inspires people. So all of them want to do it because he's made them feel good about the idea of signing up. Try and be careful with your answers that you include a degree of accuracy from the text again. Then, guys, we've got three more questions about the Tommy's attitude to being a soldier compared to Charlie's. How the boy's mum might think the same as Charlie about being a soldier. Okay, so what is it on that page that shows that? And finally, about how the Colonel's the Colonel's visit was the same as when he talked to Mrs. Peaceful about the theft of Bertha, but also how it's different when he spoke to Mrs. Peaceful about the theft of that hound. Answers on that question sheet for me, please, about pages 97 and 98. And when you've done that, thank you for your attention today, guys. Well done for listening. Looking forward to reading those responses soon. Thank you, Year 6.